Right now, your phone has more apps than a small village has opinions. You have streaming platforms with endless shows, podcasts about everything from Roman toilets to billionaire morning routines, and still, somehow, your brain leans back and says, yeah, I'm bored. So here's the question almost nobody asks at dinner, probably because it makes the room go quiet. What did ancient humans do when they got bored? Not medieval people. Not ancient Romans lounging around in sandals. Not even Egyptians building pyramids and looking dramatically into the desert. We're going way further back. 100,000 years. 200,000 years. Back before writing, before cities, before proper music, before language as we know it. Just humans, caves, fire, rocks, and a long afternoon with absolutely no Wi-Fi. The answer changes how we think about creativity, religion, society, and why your brain behaves like a raccoon trapped in a library. But first, did boredom even exist back then? That sounds like a silly question, but scientists have genuinely argued about it, which proves scientists also get bored. For a long time, researchers assumed early humans were too busy surviving to sit around thinking, ugh, there's nothing to do. Every hour must have been hunting, gathering, building shelter, avoiding animals with teeth, and trying not to become lunch. Clean, practical, no downtime. Except that idea was wrong. Very wrong. Wrong in the confident way people are wrong right before a chart ruins their day. In 1966, an anthropologist named Harold Mason studied the Kalahari hunter-gatherers, people living in a way that gave researchers a rough window into older human lifestyles. What he found was almost insulting to the modern workweek. They worked around 15 to 20 hours per week. Not per day. Per week. The rest of the time they rested. They talked. They sat. They wandered. They did a generous amount of nothing in particular, which is now called mindfulness if you charge money for it. Mason called them the original affluent society. Not because they had piles of shiny stuff, but because they had time. The one luxury modern humans pretend they'll finally have after answering just one more email. So the real question is not whether ancient humans got bored. They did. The question is, what happened when boredom showed up, sat beside the fire, and refused to leave? Let's start with the obvious one. They played. That sounds simple. It is not. In 2010, an archaeologist named Gregory Warren and his team studied tiny shells found in a South African cave. The shells were about 75,000 years old. They had little holes drilled through them. They were stained with red ochre. They were not tools. They were not weapons. They were not snacks unless someone had terrible taste. They were beads. Someone 75,000 years ago sat down with a shell, a sharp stone, and the kind of patience most of us lose when a video takes 2 seconds to load. They drilled holes. They colored the shells. They made jewelry. Not because a mammoth demanded it. Not because the tribe's spreadsheet required ornament production by sunset. They did it because at some point, after eating, resting, and staring at the same cave wall again, a thought appeared. What if I made this tiny thing look nice? And there it was. Art. Making those beads would have taken hours. Maybe days. Imagine drilling through a shell with a stone tool. No metal. No electricity. No podcast in the background. No playlist called Deep Focus Cave Vibes. Just you, the shell, and the slow emotional collapse of your wrist. But they did it anyway, because the alternative was sitting there, staring into the darkness, while someone across the fire told the same hunting story for the 9th time. Necessity gets a lot of credit for invention. But boredom was clearly in the room, raising its hand. The same pattern appears with music. In 2008, researchers digging in a cave in southern Germany found a flute. It was made from the bone of a vulture. It had 5-finger holes. It was about 40,000 years old. Think about that. Before farming. Before cities. Before taxes, which may be humanity's worst creative decision. Someone picked up a bird bone and thought, this could make noise on purpose. That is either genius or the first recorded moment of someone annoying their friends. Either way, music was born. And it makes sense. When the brain has nothing else to chew on, it starts making rhythm. Taps. It hums. It notices patterns. A drip of water. a crackling fire, footsteps in the dark, a heartbeat after hearing something move outside the cave and realizing, once again, that nature has poor boundaries. A neuroscientist named Daniel Harper argued that musical ability may be older than language. Rhythm and melody came before complex sentences. Because rhythm is pattern recognition, and pattern recognition kept us alive. A regular beat might mean walking. A sudden silence might mean danger. A repeated sound might mean something is moving nearby, and it is either dinner or it is considering you dinner. So boredom did not just create decoration and music. It opened a door to something much bigger. Imagination. Think about it. You cannot be bored unless you understand time. To be bored, your brain has to notice that this moment is lasting too long. It has to imagine that something else could be happening. It has to believe the future exists and might be more interesting than the current rock. That is huge. Boredom is one of the first signs that the mind can leave the present moment and start wandering into places that do not exist yet. Most animals do not get bored the way humans do. A dog waiting by the door is not thinking, I could have gone into pottery. It is just waiting, beautifully, dramatically, with the emotional face of a widowed poet, but still waiting. A human in a cave, though, sitting by the fire with nothing to do, starts asking questions. What if the hunt goes wrong tomorrow? What if that sound outside is not the wind? What is beyond that mountain? Why does the sky change? Where do people go when they die? Every question religion has asked, every question philosophy has wrestled with, every question science is still chasing through the dark, began in a moment like that. Someone was bored, and their mind walked away. In 2013, psychologist Clara Bennett ran a study on boredom and creativity. She gave people a painfully boring task, copying numbers from a phone book. That is not a task. That is a punishment designed by a printer. Afterward, she tested their creativity. The bored group performed better. Not a little better, clearly better, because boredom forces the brain to generate its own stimulation. When nothing is happening outside, the mind starts making things happen inside. Connects ideas. It digs up memories. It invents scenes, fears, jokes, futures, gods, monsters, plans, excuses, and occasionally the thought, maybe I should cut my own hair. The brain, when left alone, is dangerous. But it is also extraordinary. And there was one more thing ancient humans did when boredom settled in. The most important thing, they talked. Not just about hunting. Not just about food. Not just, you get berries, I get sticks, nobody poke the bear. They told stories. An anthropologist named Robert Miller studied what humans talk about when they are not discussing anything practical. His finding was almost embarrassing. A huge share of human conversation is social gossip. Who did what? Who said what? Who looked at whom too long near the fire? Who promised to bring roots and returned with one sad mushroom? At first glance, gossip sounds useless. A waste of time. The ancient version of refreshing the group chat. But it was not useless. Miller argued that language may have evolved less for giving instructions and more for bonding. Before language, primates bonded by grooming. You sat with another primate and picked through their hair. Very intimate, very social, very bad for scaling. You can groom one friend at a time. Language changed the whole game. Now you could bond with 3 people, 10 people, a whole group around a fire. You could talk about someone who was not even there, which is both a social miracle and the beginning of drama. Stories let people share danger, share rules, share warnings, share memories, share laughter, share suspicion about Kevin, who always disappears when heavy things need carrying. Language turned boredom into connection, and connection turned scattered humans into society. So here is where we end up. 75,000 years ago, someone bored in a cave made a bead. 40,000 years ago, someone bored in another cave made a flute. Somewhere in between, people sat around fires with full stomachs and empty hands, asking questions nobody could answer. Questions about death, the stars, thunder, dreams, why certain people never help clean up after dinner. Some of those questions became religion. Some became science. Some became art. Some became stories. Some became us. And now here you are, lying awake at 2 a.m. Phone on your chest, thumb frozen above the screen, thinking about nothing in particular and somehow everything at once. Here is the part people do not like to talk about. Modern psychology has a name for what happens when you remove boredom completely. Cognitive overload. When every spare second is filled, the brain never gets a chance to do the quiet work it was built to do. Process, sort, connect, imagine, feel. Make sense of the strange little circus it has been dragged through all day. There is a network in your brain called the default mode network. It becomes active when you are doing nothing, not scrolling, not watching, not replying, nothing. That same network is linked to creativity, self-reflection, memory, and empathy. In other words, the part of your brain that helps you become a deeper human being turns on when you finally stop entertaining it like a restless toddler in a supermarket. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans learned to fill silence with meaning. Then we invented the smartphone and filled silence with videos of strangers arguing about breakfast. But every time you put the phone down and let the room be quiet for a moment, something ancient wakes up. Your mind wanders. It reaches. It asks, plays with shadows, picks up a shell and imagines a bead, picks up a bone and imagines a song. It looks at the stars and asks why they are there. Boredom did not hold ancient humans back. It made them human. And maybe, if you can survive 5 minutes without checking your notifications, it might do the same for you.